and welcome to the Darts Group YouTube channel with me, Tim Adams. When Peter Wright lifted the Sid Waddell Trophy back in January, who would have had any idea what 2020 would bring us? You know, crowds cast away, tournaments postponed, and new winners in the Premier League, World Match Play, and World Grand Prix. But will that be the case again in the Bet Victor World Cup of Darts? The tournament starts on Friday in Salzburg, Austria, where 32 nations will bid to win the trophy only England, the Netherlands, and Scotland have ever held. So will the 2020 trend continue, and there will be a fourth winner potentially this year? So to discuss the tournament, we got James Lincoln, Darts database guru, Darts world writer, and part owner of Raising Sand for all you horse racing lovers out there. And with him, Sam Boswell from Bet Victor, title sponsors of the World Cup of Darts. To finish us off later on, towards the end of the pod, we've got a little Q&A with Going Price as well. So got that for you as well. But boys, welcome. How are things? Looking forward to the tournament.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, all good here. Really been enjoying watching the darts of late. The European Championship at the weekend was really good. And yeah, there's certainly a few players going into the World Cup in good form, none more so than Devon Peterson.
Hi, Tim. Yeah, looking forward to getting stuck in. Obviously, we're really proud to be sponsoring the event again. It's one I always look forward to. Slightly disappointed not to get my away day and a good weekend of darts in live, but we'll be watching from home, and we've got plenty of markets to discuss and some really interesting matchups.
Well, before kind of going into the tournament, you know, Blackpool to Salzburg is a bit of a difference, isn't it, Sam? So, like going out to Austria, that would have been quite a nice little trip there.
Yeah, we're really pleased to be supporting darts as a sport. I think, like every sport at the moment, there's challenges that things need to overcome. I've got to say, I was really impressed during the first lockdown with the at-home concepts. I know they've stuck around a bit. I think it's great to have it back on the main stage, though. Obviously, the Sky coverage is fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in. I think it's another sporting morsel for people to enjoy it at a difficult time.
It's quite a weird kind of tournament, I guess, because, you know, there aren't any crowds, of course, with Austria kind of being in lockdown. And then, you know, this is a tournament always predominantly in early June, and it's now kind of early November. Is that change going to affect the players, do you think?
Oh, I think this tournament, to me, I don't like to use the word novelty, but obviously we don't get this style of event very often. So I think it's already naturally quite an interesting event. I think the change in the calendar, just everything's been up in the air for everyone, hasn't it? And obviously there are a few disappointments. I'd like to have seen Scotland's reigning championship pair both here. They're not. Obviously that has an impact on the market as well. You wouldn't have probably found anyone suggesting Scotland would be the 40-1 we've got them priced at if they had their original team entered. But that has to be factored into the betting. It's a shame they're not there, but I'm sure the pair that are going to be representing will give a good account of trying to defend the trophy as best they can. But from a ruthless betting perspective, it's obviously hampered their chances massively.
And James, for you, like, you know, there are obvious kind of favourites. You know, only 3 nations have ever won the tournament. Do you think that could be 4 kind of coming up this year?
I do, actually. I do. I think it's. I think the market is pretty open. I think darts generally at the moment is pretty open. We saw James Wade say at the weekend that he feels it's easier to win, and the standard of the top players has fallen a little bit. And the results would tend to back that up. So we've had obviously Glenn Durrant won a Premier League, Dimitri Vanderberg won the match play, and we've had 4 different winners on the Euro Tour. So Price, Peterson, De Souza, and recently Joe Cullen. So darts just feels very open at the moment, and I think this tournament, as Sam alluded to, is very kind of unique. And I think from a betting perspective, you need to factor things in that you wouldn't normally, things like the chemistry between the players. So, you know, for example, recently Maxop and Martin Schindler have had a great chemistry between them. That pair's been split up now. The format as well. So once you're through the first round, the singles element of it becomes a lot more significant. And also the rhythm of the game. So some players, you know, simply don't like waiting 3 turns before throwing their darts. It just doesn't suit them. So I guess there's lots of different things to weigh up. It feels very open, and yeah, I think there could be a new name on the tournament.
Because the thing is, I'm thinking, especially the first round, it's such a short format and you have that doubles format, even in the first inaugural kind of World Cup in 2010, where you had the Spanish duo beating, Taylor and Wade, who are 1 and 2 in the world. I guess, you can easily get an upset in that first round, especially I'm looking at the fixtures like England, the Philippines, Lawrence Alagan and Noel Malik Dem, who took right to the edge at the World Champs. And if it wasn't for that 1-6-2 from Wright, who set up the shot to win it, he would probably have knocked the world champ out. So, in the first round, you can really get some upsets.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, really short format, you go 2 legs down, it's suddenly quite a long way back. And like I said, if you're not playing well as a player and you've got to wait 3 turns to throw at the board, your rhythm can go very quickly.
A chemistry point of view, that really interests me. And I describe myself as a darts casual, I think it's fair to say, compared to the vast knowledge of yourselves. But the chemistry, it is changeable. You look back on, when Van Gerwen was winning as part of this Dutch side, he quite often would have had Barney there with him. He's going to effectively be captain, if you like, leader. And I think that can work in 2 ways. Some people will relish that opportunity to step up and lead. And obviously his big game experience is second to none. For all that perhaps his form isn't what it used to be. I do think that's a fascinating angle to talk about, and your knowledge and darts fans' knowledge will probably come into huge play betting on this tournament based on watching those early games and seeing who's working well as a pairing. You may well find teams scrape through one game, but how determined are you to expect them to turn it around in the next? They're either going to work as a pairing or they won't, and then they'll have to rely on the single element of it.
That's the thing, James, like individual quality does come into it, but is it kind of safe to say that having a good pairing can take you a long way, even though, 2 darts players might not individually do well at a World Championships, but then they gel together, like the Hybricks brothers have always done, and then they can kind of go far in tournaments like this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Sam would talk about the quarter market and the outright market prices, I'm sure. But one pairing that interests me in New Zealand, who have historically done quite well in this tournament, they did well last year. They've got 2 players, Puha and Cody Harris, who are individually, you wouldn't think of them as exceptional players, but they've got a real chemistry that works well. They play for each other, and they generally sort of average 85-ish, 85 to 90, which in some of these games is enough to get over the line.
That's an interesting point you raise about New Zealand. They're a massive price outright, I think around 150 to 1 with ourselves, but their quarter on paper, looking at our prices, would appear one of the more open in just terms of you've got Belgium and Northern Ireland in there heading it, and then after that is such big prices the rest. If one of those 2 at the front can go out, it would open up for New Zealand, who are 14 to 1 to win that second quarter. So you can look to play that. Obviously, the individual games, I think, will probably be where you're more likely to get your winners when they're starting out early doors. But I would be sat here and say I'm not prepared to say that you can write anyone off from this tournament. There's angles all over the place.
And having that kind of open draw, like having that kind of favourable, quarter it can be kind of a blessing for some teams. So who's got the best quarter then, would you say, out of the seeded teams? Who's the favourite so far from the first few rounds? Who's the underdog, would you say, for this World Cup of Darts?
Well, just taking a look through the quarter markets, England are 4 to 7 to win their quarter. Their next competitor in the market is showing as Austria at 9 to 2. But I'd say, darts matches aren't played on paper, are they? But England look pretty solid there at 4 to 7. Next up, that second quarter I've already mentioned. Bit of a toss-up between Belgium and Northern Ireland at the prices. Belgium just a shades of odds on at 10 to 11. Northern Ireland 6 to 4. And then bigger the rest. New Zealand, as we mentioned already, in there at 14s. The third quarter, Wales 4 to 7. Obviously, we've got the Q&A coming up with Gerwin soon. I think he's safe to say a proud Welshman, isn't he? And I definitely wouldn't fancy having to try and play against him on that stage with his stature and how he likes to play the game. Australia next in there at 4 to 1. The fourth quarter is an interesting one. The Dutch are 8 to 13 for the Netherlands, which I think is a huge price. Germany in there at 6 to 4, and then much bigger the rest. But if you don't fancy the Netherlands, whatever reason you may have for that, I'm sure you guys will be able to chime in and give reasons why you should or shouldn't want to back them. The Germans at 6 to 4 could be an interesting runner for the quarter there.
Well, James, Maxop and Gabrielle Clemens, we know kind of the pedigree of both of them. Maxop kind of has had that history in the World Cup of Darts with Martin Schindler, who's played a few stunning individual matches with MVG. I remember one a few years ago where it was 180, 180, 180, and the crowd was just rising and rising. But, Danny Noppert's been okay, but, could you say Clemens and Hop could beat the Dutch in that quarter?
Absolutely. I think they could. I think Hop and Clemens are both in good form. Hop's been playing really well on the Euro Tour. Clemens has kind of had his first taste of major events this year, had a win at the match play and had a win at the Grand Prix, and is now the German number one, actually. So absolutely, they are a rock solid pairing. It'd be interesting to see how they play together because, like you say, the Schindler-Hop partnership worked really well. Conversely, you've got Noppert making his World Cup debut. He's a guy who I've followed quite closely, and I think he is somebody who could be a sort of top 10 player in time. But it's all new experiences for him at the moment. He lost 6-0 in the European Championship at the weekend, which is obviously not a great preparation. And obviously the main man himself, Michael van Gerwen, has been struggling since lockdown. There's no two ways about it. He's not won a major in that time. He's reached a couple of finals in the Euro Tour, but has been soundly beaten. And yeah, absolutely. I think Sam's right. I think Germany 6-4 could be a play in that quarter market. Do we think
the change in surroundings for Michael, in the change of format, I think that could bring him back to his best? Sort of a debate we were having in the office earlier. We don't think he's necessarily gone at the game, but sometimes just a different approach. Obviously, this year's been so strange, and he'd be a man absolutely at home in big crowds, big venues. Other players' floor events suit them better. Do we think that perhaps this style of event, do you think it's going to worsen his woes? Because I think he'll obviously be under pressure to be leading that side.
Yeah, it's a good question, Sam. It's a good question because I guess in some ways, like you say, he's under pressure to lead that side to victory. But at the same time, the pressure might be off a bit in that he's got a partner with him as well. I just don't think he's playing well enough at the moment. He's not playing badly. He lost to Ian White at the weekend and averaged over 100. But he's not, particularly on the combination finishing, he's just not as clinical as he used to be. He's missing a lot of last dart doubles. He's missing a lot of 2-dart, 3-dart combinations. And yeah, 8-13 for that quarter just looks a little bit skinny to me.
It's just mad. I was trying to do my homework and reading up on the 10 highest one-game averages in the World Cup. And the top 3 is Michael van Gerwen and Barney, Michael van Gerwen and Barney, Michael van Gerwen and Barney.
Yeah.
And you look at that and you think, God, we should be quaking in our boots at laying that side, and we're not. And it's just it's amazing what 12 months has done for the market in darts. And, Michael's prowess, I hope it returns because I think it's a massive selling point for darts. But an open draw, an open tournament makes for fascinating viewing, and there's some value out there.
Because the thing is, you talk about world number one, and MVG's been world number one for 7-8 years now. And, there is talk potentially if Peter Wright, retains the world title, if he does well at the Grand Slam, that he could get that number one spot. But obviously he's not in this World Cup of Darts tournament. So what do we make of Scotland's chances? John Henderson and Robert Thornton, completely new pairing from Anderson and Wright. I can't imagine there'll be bagpipes in Austria kind of up that gangway again. But how do you think they'll get on against a good Japanese side?
I actually think this is my bet of the first round. To be honest, I think no offence, Sam, but I think the Layers have got this one wrong. Scotland seem quite a strong favourite. What are they, round 1-2 to win this match against Japan?
Yeah, Scotland 1-2, Japan 7-5.
Yeah, so like you say, Tim, it's a great story. John Henderson, Robert Thornton, 2 absolute stalwarts of Scottish darts, getting the opportunity to defend the trophy that Anderson and Wright won last year. But if you look a bit deeper, they're both struggling. So Thornton has had problems with health and form over the last couple of years. He's on the verge of losing his tour card, so he's going to fall off the tour. I think he's played the Summer Series and the Autumn Series. In the Autumn Series, he didn't win a game in the last three days of that event. Similarly, Henderson has hardly played since lockdown. He also played the Summer Series and the Autumn Series and I think across the whole 10 days, he had 6 first-round exits. And he played a Euro Tour event a couple of weeks ago and lost in the first round. So, make no mistake, both of these guys are struggling and come into this event, defending a title and will be under pressure. So conversely, you've got Japan, who kind of come into it under the radar. Seigo Asada, we saw what he could do at the World Championship. Gave Peter Wright a real scare. Averaged 95 plus and also averaged over 92, I think, in the first couple of rounds at the Ali Palace.
Seems to be a trend, this, about players giving Peter Wright a scare at a World Championship, isn't it, in this tournament?
Yeah. So I think he's a serious player. I was surprised he didn't get through Q School, but look, Q School's not for everyone. It's a pretty intense environment there. I seriously think Japan at 7-5, I'd have them slight favourites to beat Scotland.
Yeah, I think it's great to have that opinion, and I'd be staggered if we have got them all right, put it that way, because these matchups, like I say, we're bound to get an upset or two. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Japan in the outright market sit there at 100-1, Scotland at 40-1. If Scotland hadn't won it last year, I don't think we'd be talking about Scotland, to be frank, really, based on what you've told me regarding the players that are there. They might as well not be the Scotland that won it last year, because they're not. So it's interesting and curious, and I think I might follow in on your bet there and have a little bit on Japan as maybe an ACCA for the first round, and they'll be my value leg to hopefully pump up a bit of a price.
Well, that's the thing. The prices will, they will change so dramatically. It's not like having a World Cup in football where, one player out is going to change the markets that considerably, because, you've got 2 players here, 2 completely new players, Anderson and Wright. No disrespect to Henderson and Thornton, but they're not on the level of Anderson and Wright. And I guess you could say the same for kind of Smith and Cross, kind of going back to the Taylor and Lewis era of when they won the World Cup 4 times. And how do we think England are going to get on against a good Philippine side as well?
1-5 with ourselves to get off to a winning start, which I think England will expect. But like I say, that will be pressure. Let's make no mistake on it. Darts players are used to handling individual pressure, but they're going to have to gel. They're going to have to gel quickly, as the format we've mentioned before as well. 1-5, I'd like to think I could put them in my first round ACCA, but I'll bow to your wisdom and be interested to hear thoughts.
Yeah, I think the one thing in their favour is that they've got a fairly good draw. So I think Rob Cross and Michael Smith have both had struggles in recent times. Rob Cross in particular, I think, he's had no runs in any majors at all. And he's had bits and pieces on the Euro Tour, but hasn't really done much. Michael Smith had a difficult Premier League experience, and again hasn't really. I think he had a semi-final at the match play, which was the first major behind closed doors. But since then, again, not a lot to talk of. So that said, I think they'll probably get through the Philippines game. I think it's a tricky kind of banana skin game, but I think they'll get through it. And then they've got Lithuania or Gibraltar, who again they should be good enough to get past. I think it might get trickier after that, because then they're likely to have Portugal and Austria. And obviously Portugal in particular interests me because they've got the man at the moment, Jose de Souza, who
hit a 9 darter at the European
hit a 9 dart leg at the European Championship, won a Euro Tour 3. And, to be brutally frank, if I would have de Souza favourite to beat any player in the top half of the draw in a best of 7 match at the moment. That's quite bold, but I would.
A bold claim, that.
Yeah.
We like bold claims. That's good. Staking your claim. I don't sit on that fence. England 3-1 in the outright winner market, which feels a bit skinny, judged on how you just described their chances to me, James.
Yeah, I think so. I couldn't touch them at 3s. Like I said, they've got, on paper, you'd say they've got a friendly first couple of rounds, but then it gets tougher. And I just think generally the bottom half of the draw is a lot stronger with Wales and the Netherlands and Germany.
Is it the case you think England could potentially struggle mentally later on as well? Because Smith and Cross, they haven't had the best years. Obviously, both of them have got to World Championship finals. Cross obviously won his, but, Cross was relegated from the Premier League, and Smith, again, it's that case of doubles. It's scoring is usually brilliant with him, but the doubles, when it comes to the combination finishes, they just haven't been consistent enough. And do you think when the pressure gets on, they could buckle later on in the tournament?
Yeah, I think you could be right, Tim. I mean, Michael Smith, to watch is just an absolute pleasure. And the guy just hits 180s for fun. He's such a lovely rhythm player to watch. But you're right, when the kind of really crucial doubles are there, you're kind of not sure whether he's going to hit it or not. The major finals he's got to, he's generally had an appalling start in all of them, and has then kind of lost the match early on. And I can remember the match play. I think he was 6 or 7-0 down to Rob Cross, and the match was gone. Later stages in the tournament, we've seen this in the World Cup. It can be, obviously the crowd won't be there, but it can get very tense, particularly in the pairs. And I wouldn't be looking at that 3-1 as investable, shall we say.
My worry would be, based on both of them having patchy form, I think in a way the ideal combination would probably be 2 players absolutely flying. That goes without saying. But at least if you had one player that had been posting good results recently, they can drag the other one up to their level. My worry would be Cross and Smith going to pull each other down if one of them starts missing the doubles, one of them starts playing poorly. I worry where the inspiration is going to come from if they get into a sticky corner.
Well, talking of the match play, Dimitri Vanderberg, of course, won it this year for the first time. And it's a fascinating pairing. Kim Huybrechts has always been with his brother, Ronnie Huybrechts. Dimitri Vanderberg has now got that major title. Is there a chance they could win it, do you think? Outside bet on that one?
I think, Sam, have you got them 14s, I think, outright?
Yeah, let me just check. There's quite a few, actually, sitting around that. Yeah, 14-1.
Yeah, I think that's potential in each way play, because like I said, I think that top half is very open and very winnable. Vandenberg seems to be one of those guys who just turns up on TV. Put him on the floor and he doesn't tend to perform that well. Put him on stage, he's had great results at the World Championship and then obviously won the match play this year. Huybrechts, he's kind of been ticking along steady. He's done okay on the Euro Tour, did okay in the autumn series without really ripping up trees. So I think form-wise, they're certainly in that quarter. I kind of expect them to get through that quarter, although I think New Zealand are value at 14-1. But if Belgium get through that quarter and face off against England in semi-finals, I think that's potentially a toss-up. I think 14-1 in the outright market's potentially in each way play.
Are you not worried about Northern Ireland sitting in there?
I'm not, to be honest, Sam. I know they've done reasonably well at this tournament before, but Gurney, he's still 7 in the order of merit, but he's been struggling. Again, didn't have a bit like Michael Smith, didn't have a great Premier League experience, and has been eliminated in all of the majors quite early on. Brendan Dolan, not really done much to speak of either. So yeah, I wouldn't be getting my hopes up for them to have a long run, to be honest.
They've got quite a lot of hit. I think Brendan Dolan's played every single World Cups. I think there are 9 players. I think Dolan's one of them. So maybe that experience could help them possibly there. I know you mentioned New Zealand as well, talking about Cody Harris, and they could potentially be quite dangerous as well in that side of the draw. Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think it's really open. I think, like I say, I think 14-1 New Zealand is definitely potentially good value. Northern Ireland I'd generally be against, just because you're right, they have got a good history, and Dolan is somebody who's produced some quite epic moments in this tournament in the past, but I just think both of them are a bit off colour, and as Sam alluded to earlier, if both players are out of form, it can be quite difficult to kind of raise each other up.
So yeah, that second quarter, just a reminder, we've got Belgium, shades of odds on at 10-11, Northern Ireland, who are being put off every second by James here, 6-4, and then New Zealand at 14. So there's an option there if you want to play that, depending if you agree and want to take Northern Ireland on. You've got a couple of different options at different prices and how you want to play it.
If Northern Ireland do well, we apologise, by the way, so on that one. So, one match I want to talk about is the Republic of Ireland, actually. Pretty the tie of the round, you could say, against Australia. 2 World Cup finalists, and if anybody ever watched the Nicholson kind of affair with Taylor and Lewis, back in the day, we know what happened there with Whitlock as well. William O'Connor, Steve Lennon got to the final last year. Whitlock is with Damon Heta this year, who won the Brisbane Darts Masters, so no mean feat in that, beating some top players. How do we think that will go? Who do you think will potentially progress? And then can they progress even further?
Yeah, good question. I think I fancy Australia. I presume they're favourites, Sam.
13-20 Australia, the Republic 23-20 as it stands at the moment for that matchup.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. I think Australia, Whitlock has had a bit of a renaissance recently. He's obviously heavily beaten Van Gerwen in 2 majors at the match play and the Grand Prix, and probably should have had a very winnable semi-final at the Grand Prix as well on paper against Van. I can't say his name.
Dirk Van. Oh yeah, Dirk Van Duvenboyd.
Yeah.
The aubergine farm. Yeah.
Yeah. So Whitlock's, in good form. Damon Heta is somebody he's a new tour card holder. Like you say, had that big win last year. Won an event at the Autumn Series as well, which was obviously, quite significant. So I think they come into it in much better form. Steve Lennon hasn't really produced much of late. Willie O'Connor reached the quarters of the European Championship at the weekend, but by his own admission, wasn't playing that well, and was only in that tournament because Glenn Durrant dropped out with COVID. So I think the prices on that are about right. In terms of Australia's kind of potential within the tournament moving forward, I think that the tricky thing is they're going to have Wales, aren't they? If they get through Ireland and they get through the round after, then it's Wales, and that could be tricky.
16-1 looks a bit skinny. Then I'm guessing you're going to say with the outright market for the win.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've like I say, I expect them to get past Ireland, but then potentially got South Africa or Poland, which won't be easy, and then it's a case of Wales. So yeah, not for me personally.
It's a tough area of the draw, that, all those teams in there. And talking about South Africa, Devon Peterson, talking about renaissances as well. Devon Peterson, has gone from the Sky studio to, commentating, and he's now hitting, more 180s than tons. I think there's a crazy stat the other day that I saw that when he hit the first triple 20, he hit more 180s, 21 against more tons, being 18. Even if that was Van Gerwen, people would be, lauding him. But, Peterson, could he carry that South African team?
Yeah, he is. This isn't a flash in the pan either. He's been producing these numbers for 7-8 months now, and I think a few people are only just cottoning on. The bookmakers being one. I think he's now best price 25-1 for the Worlds, whereas 5-6 months ago, you were talking 500-1. So he is, in red hot form. I think the changes are down to he's changed his darts. He went to a new manufacturer. He's also spent some time with the likes of Wayne Mardle on the coaching front, and he's also got a great attitude. He realised he had to change things. He's done that, and he's reaping the rewards now. This is their first round match is another one that I think the bookies might have got slightly wrong. So I think they're about 7-4, Sam, to beat Poland.
13-8 South Africa. Poland
2-5,
which looks short. We're moving them all the time, but I'd say, listen, if you're looking for a price, you've got a player there that arrives with, and again, this goes back to my comment earlier on. If he can lift his teammate to anywhere near that level, they're going to be pretty formidable against anyone.
Yeah, and I think the bookies have priced this match up based on the assumption that Kachuk, who is Ratajski's partner, is significantly better than Peterson's partner, which is a guy called Carl Gabrielle. But Carl Gabrielle, if you look at some of his statistics that he's producing in kind of some of the virtual home tournaments, he's producing kind of 90 averages, and I know Devon's got quite a healthy respect for him. So, I'd have this one, pretty much even, an even money match. I think South Africa are a bet at 13-8.
It's the thing is, in this kind of format as well, especially in the first round where it is first to 5 legs in a doubles format, the upsets can be quite high. But you also get teams, some teams, like the favourites a lot of the time, they will have 2 stellar names. But other teams, they've got one kind of standout name and then one other name which less people have heard less of, but this could be a competition where they can be inspired a lot of the time. And I'm just thinking of De Sousa for Portugal as well, how that could work out for him, because if he gets going, then they could be, obviously in this tournament as well, because of Harith Lim pulling out for Singapore. So could it be like another Whitlock World Grand Prix semi-final moment of, you get in at the last minute and then you go skyrocketing through the tournament?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Tim. I actually have backed Portugal each way in the outright. The reason for that is because, like I said earlier, I would have, in this side of the draw, in a singles match, I'd have de Sousa favourite to beat anybody in a one-off match. I don't know a great deal about his partner, who's a guy called Jose Marquez. I know that he tried to qualify at Q School, and I know across 5 days of Q School, he averaged around 83, 84, which isn't huge, but it gives you an indication that the guy can play. And like you say, if de Sousa's winning his singles games, so if they get through the Hungary match first up, which I think they should, if de Sousa's winning his singles games, then it potentially comes down to the doubles, which de Sousa can influence. And like you say, Tim, if Marquez can just kind of put together a reasonable standard of play, then I really think Portugal are dangerous. De Sousa is so dangerous. His scoring power is... Him and Devon Peterson are the biggest 180 hitters on the tour at the moment.
33-1 sat in the market at the moment. Obviously, 2 places each way. At those sort of prices, if you get to the final, you'll probably be doing okay.
I wanted to touch on my favourites, who are Wales as well. We haven't actually talked about them a bit yet. Go-in price and Johnny Clayton against Russia with Boris Koltsov in the first match. Wales obviously in a tricky bit of the draw, but Price is obviously 2-time Grand Slam winner, World Grand Prix winner. I think he's pretty my favourite to even win the Grand Slam again, and even the Worlds. To be honest, Johnny Clayton's in fairly good form as well. Had some, fairly recent performances, good recent performances at the Euros. How do you think the Welsh will get on?
I think I'd have them favourites to win it. I think I talked earlier about how darts is really open at the moment. I think that the exception to that is Gerwyn Price, who has been very consistent. He's won various events, and he's become a really, really solid match player. He's very hard to beat. It's rare that he throws in poor performances, as the likes of Van Gerwen and Wright have done at times. And Johnny Clayton is a guy who, believe it or not, I can't believe he's still part-time. He's still got a job working as a plasterer, which is just insane, really, when you consider he's like world number, I think he's 15 or 16 on the Order of Merit, and genuinely one of the best players around. So I think they're really solid. One negative might be that I think I alluded to earlier, they lost in the first round last year. I think it was to Singapore. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they come into it in very different headspace. I think Price is so confident. It takes a really good performance to beat him, as we saw at the weekend with Peter Wright. If you don't play well against Price, you've got no chance. And Clayton is very solid. So I think they should be favourites. And I'd certainly, I think there's some 3-1 out there. I'd certainly be taking them at 3-1 ahead of the likes of England at the same price.
11-4, the Welsh reverse. And I will give a plug as well. We have got the World Championship market up, which is always chopping and changing. Currently, Michael Van Gerwen heads it, but Gerwyn Price is 11-2 shot with ourselves. So be interesting to see as we creep towards the Worlds if he ends up going off favourite, which with his consistency, I actually think he may well get to that point. Could be a shortener there.
Well, we've got the Players' Champs, I know, before that as well, and the Grand Slam, of course. Just a few kind of, few more thoughts on the World Cup of Darts. The averages as well. Do you think we'll see averages like, 117.88 is the world record average, is what the Netherlands of Barney and MVG set against Northern Ireland all that way back in 2014? Or does crowds have an effect? No crowds in this sense. That do they have an effect and potentially player performance? Likewise, even a 9-darter, a possibility for the first ever World Cup 9-darter as well.
I think you're right, Tim. I think the lack of crowds will have an impact. I think generally, if you look at some of the matches that have taken place behind closed doors, a good example is the Premier League finals night. Both those semi-finals and the final were actually quite flat, and the players looked flat and were struggling to find form. If you look at some of the footage of some of those averages you've talked about, like the Netherlands producing the 117 average or whatever it was. The Hybrex brothers in the singles games have produced, I think Kim produced 121 in a game and Ronnie 117, 116. you watch those games on YouTube, the crowd are just going crazy, and it's just a kind of great atmosphere. Everyone's thriving off it, and I think because there won't be a crowd, I think it'll be difficult for the players to get into that kind of space to produce that level of performance, to be honest.
I have a theory that it's very much adrenaline led to get players into. For all it seems bizarre, doesn't it, to suggest that some 5,000 screaming, shouting fans would help you. I think it almost pushes athletes of any kind, be it darts players, footballers, into a zone of concentration, which some players will naturally find easier. And you can see that in the floor events versus crowd-based events. And that definitely is true. But I'd say the big name players will all universally miss fans, whether they get a good reception or a bad reception, because it's what they're used to. It's the normal. And then to have that taken away suddenly makes it a lot harder to play your usual game. So I have asked the lads, it hopefully will go up on site, I have asked them to price up the 9 darter, because I do think for some players it would be an advantage. It's always a fun market to get involved in, and be very interested to see if we get one in the World Cup this year.
Because that's the thing. I remember when we had the first ever, the 9 darter at the Grand Prix, and that was seen as the holy grail of 9 darters. But I think that's kind of converted to the World Cup now. We've come close. I remember the Netherlands coming quite close recently. Likewise, Australia as well. But that would be insane if it happened. But ironically, then there would be no crowd.
It would just be mild applause. I mean, we saw recently, we sponsored the Weber Cup, which is a bowling event and 10-pin bowling, and we had the perfect game, and it hadn't been a perfect game for ages, and the reaction was just sort of some fist bumps between the players. That's as much as you could do, and it feels very strange. But like I say, it certainly won't lessen the achievement of doing the impossible on the World Cup stage.
So, lads, what are your final thoughts on the tournament then? Austria hosting it, of course. We haven't even touched on Austria, Nenad Sulevic and, Roby John Rodriguez, about the lack of home support even with that. But how do you think the semi-finals will be? Who do you think the teams will be in the semi-finals? Could it be a case where we see 4 teams in the semi-finals who have never won the tournament before?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think that as general thoughts, the top half of the draw is a lot more open. The bottom half looks a lot tougher. I think Wales are rock solid. I expect them to get through their quarter. Netherlands could potentially have a tough game against Germany, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Germany beat them in the semi-final. Top half, I think Portugal are a real live outsider, depending on how well de Sousa gets supported by his partner. And in the bottom half, I think Belgium are rightful favourites to come through that. The bottom quarter of the top half. Belgium are rightful favourites to come through that, but I do think New Zealand potentially 14-1 is a fair play on the quarter market.
I'm just gonna sit here and tell you I've been talked into backing Portugal at 33s right now as we've been on air. But no, I must say of the 3 at the front of the market, if I had a gun to my head and pick one of the shorties, I'd be following the Welsh side. I don't know. I don't think England at 3-1 is a fair price with the form. Netherlands, you're relying on if Van Gogh and Old turned up 5-2 is a steal, but I just think you've got everything going for you. If you want someone to follow for the tournament, I'll probably be taking the Welsh at 11-4 at the moment. But I'm going to have a nibble at Portugal at the bigger prices as well.
Well, talking of the Welsh, we've got a little Q&A with Gerwyn Price coming up soon. But lads, thank you so much for one of our first videos on the Darts Group YouTube channel, our little World Cup preview for you. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more of these in the future. Sam, thanks for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you soon as well, James. I'm sure we will 100%. So thank you for listening, and goodbye, guys.
Guys, before I head off, just a quick fire round for the Darts World magazine. As quick or as slow as you like, but first memory of watching darts?
Well, Phil Taylor smashing everyone.
Yeah. Okay, first memory of playing darts. Was that as a kid or when you were a bit older?
When I was really young, I used to clean the rugby club, and my mate John Earn used to run it, and I used to just have a throw there while in between putting the over out.
Did you have potential back then? Were you hitting the doubles back then, or?
No, not then, not at all.
Okay. The darts GOAT, the greatest of all time darts player.
Phil Taylor.
Okay, the highest break in snooker that you've had?
108.
Okay. Your sporting hero?
I don't really have one.
No? Okay, you're probably
Well, if anyone, Jonah Lumo in rugby. I used to look up to him all the way through, and yeah, probably him.
Okay. Your favourite holiday?
Florida.
Proudest moment in darts?
Back-to-back Grand Slams.
Nice. Hope to add another one to that. Best TV program you've watched?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really watch much TV.
Well, not even on the road?
No, well, I always got cooking programs on, but that's about it.
Okay, the favourite dish that you make?
Sunday roast.
Okay, nice. Best film that you've watched?
Best film. I watched the new film Tenet. That was a good film.
Okay, nice. And your first job, apart from the cleaner at the local rugby club?
I worked when I was 16, 17 in a food factory in Rogerstone called Brooks's.
Lovely. Okay, so look, I'm not going to take up any more of your time, Gaz, but what I will ask now, obviously the year ends with the Worlds, of course. Is 2021 the year of the Iceman?
I hope it's 2021, 2022, 2023, every year.
Fantastic. And any more plans to change the walk-on music back to the phonics? Because I kind of like that, even though that night wasn't really meant to be for you.
I know every time I change anything, a shirt, my darts, or a new set of darts. I even changed my bag. I had a new bag the other day and I lost, so I've gone back to my old bag. I'm a bit superstitious, so I like to keep to what I know best. I don't change anything very often.
Yeah, keep that Gazzy winning formula. And as well, I know that you have like these little premonitions. You say you're superstitious. I mean, have you had a premonition about this year's Worlds?
To be honest, I haven't looked that far yet. Just got one eye on the Grand Slam, obviously wanting to defend us. So I'm going to look at that hurdle first. And once I get over that one, hopefully, then just get my other eye on the World Championships.
Perfect. Well, I definitely can envisage you holding up that trophy one day at least. Let's hope it's in the near future.
Hopefully.
All right then, guys. Well, look, good luck, stay safe, and keep doing Wales proud. And we'll make a Sports Personality of the Year winner out of you before long. All right, my love?
So, thanks.